Is this helping me achieve a goal that's important to me? And if it's not, just say no. Procrastination is the enemy. Procrastination is your enemy. Procrastination is my enemy. Procrastination is not only the thief of time, it's the thief of money, it's the thief of life, it's the thief of success, it's the thief of happiness, it's the thief of self-esteem and high achievement. Procrastination is something that you need to go to work to strategically, step by step, eliminate as a part of your life. And in this session, I'm going to tell you how to do it. The wonderful thing about procrastination, if there's anything good, is that when you eliminate procrastination, you have the key to success. Let's start off with that point. Number one, the elimination of procrastination is the key to success. In fact, you cannot imagine a successful person who's a procrastinator, and you cannot imagine a person who gets things done immediately who is unsuccessful in any way. So, number two is, in order to overcome procrastination, you need good organization. You need good organization. You need to take the time to think and plan. You need to take the time to think, what is it you're trying to do? How are you trying to do it? What are the most important things that you've been hired to accomplish? What are your key result areas? What are your most important priorities? And so on. So what we've been talking about up to now is giving you all the tools necessary, including eliminating the time wasters and especially eliminating this one. So now you're well organized. You've got your goals. You've got your plans. It's time to go. What are the obstacles to eliminating procrastination? Well, here's one of the primary ones. We talked about it very early, and it's the difference between the urgent and the important. We said before that the urgent is seldom important and the important is seldom urgent. But what happens is that the important things, the ones that are not urgent, are the ones that can contribute the most to our lives. They're also the biggest tasks, and they're the ones that have the greatest negative consequences if we don't complete them on time. What is important eventually becomes urgent. So what do? We don't allow ourselves enough time. We hurry and try to get a lot of things done in a short period of time. We don't do them as well as we could, and our critical, biggest opportunities for high performance are kicked out from under us. The natural tendency to delay on our important but not urgent tasks builds the habit of procrastination, and pretty soon, if we're not careful, we start to procrastinate on everything. Well, the fourth key to overcoming procrastination is to use procrastination in this way. Use what we call creative procrastination. Creative procrastination is another way of calling it or referring to completion by deletion. Creative procrastination says that since you can't do everything, law of forced efficiency, you have to do something. So what you do is you procrastinate on the 80% of tasks that only account for 20% of your results, so that you have enough time to spend the 80% of your time on the 20% of your tasks that account for the 80% of your results. Are you with me on this? In other words, you consciously choose what subjects or what areas or tasks you're going to procrastinate on, and then you deliberately refuse to do those things because they do not contribute to the most important goals you have set for yourself. We say, by the way, that intelligence, if you want the highest hallmark of intelligence is doing those things that move you toward the accomplishment of your most important goals. And the flip side of intelligence is lack of intelligence or stupidity, and stupidity is not doing the things that move you towards your goals or doing things that move you away from your goals. So creative procrastination is very important. What things are you not going to do so that you have time to do the things that you have to do in order to be successful? Now, the fifth key is to launch. The fifth key with regard to procrastination is to get on with it. Get on with it. The natural tendency for most people is they procrastinate. They give in to the tendency to clear up small things first. And by the way, the more you work on small things, the more they multiply, so you never get them all done. And they procrastinate. So the way that you get started on your major task is you launch. In fact, a longitudinal study indicated that the ability to launch on something important is a critical factor of success. And here's a couple of techniques that you can use to get started, to launch. The first technique is what is called the salami slice technique. Now, when we look at a large job or task, it's usually overwhelming and it daunts us, and we have a tendency to make excuses and to put off getting started until everything is just right. The salami slice technique says when you take a loaf of salami, you don't try to eat the whole thing at once. What you do is you just carve off a slice. And with regard to procrastination, you take your most important task and you write out a list, a clear plan and a list of everything that you need to do, and then you slice off one piece and you do just that. Maybe you just make a phone call. Maybe you just assemble some information. Maybe you just prepare. But you slice off one small piece, and you do that until it's complete. Don't worry about anything else. A second method, which is similar to this, is what is called the Swiss cheese technique. And the Swiss cheese technique says what you do is you pick a 5-minute piece of the job. You punch a hole in the job by saying, I'm going to do this 5-minute piece and nothing more. So you salami slice or Swiss cheese, and what it does is it gets you started, it gets you launched. Very often, by the way, once you get started, they say well begun is half done. Once you get started, sometimes you'll have the momentum. You'll develop what they call the big mo, the momentum, and you'll start working toward getting it achieved. Now, the seventh key to overcoming procrastination is to establish a reward structure for yourself, a reward schedule. Now, a reward schedule we've talked about before just simply says this, is if you have jobs that you procrastinate on, give yourself an organized reward for each thing that you're going to do. When we talk to salespeople, for instance, we say you have to make a certain number of prospecting calls. Well, if you like coffee, do this. Instead of giving yourself a cup of coffee just when you come in, give yourself a cup of coffee after you've made 5 calls. Do you like cookies? Well, break up a cookie and give yourself a piece of cookie. Train yourself the way you would train a dog, if you like, with rewards, and then be very strict with yourself. This is where you see what you're made of. It's one thing to say I'm going to give myself a reward only after I have done it, but then can you stick to it? Because if you can stick to it, not only is it a mark of character, but it will help snap this habit of procrastination. Now, number 8 is develop a sense of urgency. We said earlier that senior executive officers were asked what characteristics would most put a person on the fast track. And they said the first one was to separate the relevant from the irrelevant, to do what is important, to set priorities. The second is to get on with the job and do it fast. Develop a sense of urgency. A sense of urgency is possessed by less than 2% of the population. And you know something? Just about everybody works for them. A sense of urgency means that when the job comes up, you get going. You do it now. Do it now. Do it now. You say to yourself over and over again, I do it now, do it now, do it now. Some companies used to get everybody together in the morning and they would say, I do it now, do it now, do it now, 50 times a day. And what this does is it programs this command into the subconscious so that you're unconsciously impelled into doing your most important tasks. A sense of urgency is one of the rarest of all qualities, but because today the biggest problem that we have is what is called time poverty. In other words, everybody feels short of time. We have more money than time in many respects. So when a person does things for us fast, gets back to us fast, calls us fast, helps us fast, we consider that person to be more capable, more competent, more reliable, more dependable, smarter, more better performer, and everything. So therefore, when your boss asks you, when your customers ask you, when important people to you ask you for things, do it quickly. And this brings us to number 9, and it is that fast tempo is essential to success. Fast tempo in every study is essential to success. What does that mean? It means that successful people work quickly. They work at a higher, faster tempo. In the same period of time, imagine someone driving at 25 miles an hour and someone driving at 75 miles an hour, and they both drive for an hour. Well, at the end of the hour, the person driving at the higher speed will have covered a lot more ground. The person who works with fast tempo gets a lot more done in the same period of time. But here's another point, is when you have fast tempo, you have more energy. The harder you work, the faster you work, the more energy you have. The higher your self-esteem, the better you feel. The slower you work, the more tired you get, the more depressed, the less energy you have. So fast tempo and a sense of urgency go hand in hand with great achievement. Number 10, once you get started towards your job, don't stop. Once you get launched, don't stop. Discipline yourself, and here's where the key comes in. Discipline yourself to stay at it. Keep your head down. Keep saying, back to work, back to work, back to work. Get yourself in the physiology, the body language of high performance. But once you get started, don't stop. Just keep on going, keep on going. Now here's another technique that you can use to overcome procrastination, and that is to start your job on the outside. Start your job on one of the smaller tasks that you have to do. You see, a task has a lot of little jobs that have to be done. It also has core jobs. So start on the outside and do something small. Another thing that you can do, if you have the right temperament, is start on the inside. And start with the core task. Start with the most important part of the job that has to be done, and do that. Either one of these will often get you going. The 13th key to overcoming procrastination is start with the worst. Start with the worst possible thing that you have to do every day. There's a little joke that says that if you get up in the morning and you eat a frog first thing in the morning, what will happen is that you'll overcome procrastination because you'll know that the worst thing that could possibly happen to you has happened to you already. You've eaten a live frog. What this means is when you get up in the morning and you start off with the most unpleasant task. They've done several studies with regard to exercise, by the way, and they find that people who exercise first thing in the morning are several times more likely to continue exercising than people who wait until later in the day, because later in the day there's always a reason to procrastinate. So therefore, start off your morning, start off your workday by doing the most unpleasant but often the most important thing first. Now, number 14. Many people are motivated to do things as a result of fear. So therefore, ask yourself, what are the negative consequences of not doing this job and getting this job done on time? What are the negative consequences? When you think very clearly about what might likely happen to you if you don't do the job well, often it will motivate you toward doing the job. Now, other people, number 15, are motivated by desire. How do you motivate yourself by desire? Well, you visualize the job as complete. Visualize the job as 100% complete, and think of all the positive benefits that will accrue to you by doing the job and doing the job well. Best technique, use them both. Think what might happen if you don't get it done. Think what might happen when you do get it done. And the combination of those two will often impel you forward. Number 16 key is designate a particular time to work. Say, look, I am going to work for 15 minutes on this task from 8 a.m. to 8:15. And just give yourself a specific time. Now, you may give yourself 30 minutes or 90 minutes, but instead of worrying about getting the whole job done, just designate a specific time and say, after this, I'll go on to something else. Often, this will break the back of the procrastination and will launch you into it. Number 17 key to overcoming procrastination is to pick one area where procrastination is hurting you. Now, this is important. One of the major reasons why people fail in developing new habits is when they start with a habit, they're usually highly motivated, but then the hard work begins and their motivation drops and they quit. What you need to do is, instead of trying to start a whole lot of things, do just one thing. Pick one area where procrastination is hurting you. It's holding back your career, and make the decision that you're going to defeat procrastination in that area. Just like a military principle, select your enemy, procrastination, select the area or your choice of terrain and go to work to hammer procrastination in this particular area. The wonderful thing is this, is that overcoming procrastination in one area has a halo effect and enables you to begin overcoming procrastination in other areas. Whereas if you try to beat procrastination in your whole life, what will happen is you'll hit this dip. It's called the motivation dip. You'll hit this dip, and what will happen is you won't overcome procrastination anywhere. So start off by picking one area where it's hurting you the most and go to work. If it takes a day, a week, a month, affirm, visualize, plan, organize, use all of these ideas, but kill procrastination where it seems to be holding you back. And this brings us to number 18. A good plan, very carefully worked out in detail and in writing, is one of the most powerful tools of all to defeat procrastination. So sitting down and thinking through your goals very clearly, planning your goals, planning your activities, setting priorities, working out a schedule, working out a project management sheet, and putting it in writing is a very powerful way to launch or drop kick you into doing the job. Number 19 is to remember the 20-80 rule. The 20-80 rule says sometimes the first 20% of what you do accounts for 80% of your results. Sometimes what you need to do is just launch yourself into the first 20%, and then you're over the hill and you're on the way down toward completion. The last two, number 20, are rationalization. Rationalization always accompanies procrastination. Rationalization is making excuses for not doing what we know we should do. So don't allow yourself to make excuses because it leads to insanity. All right, and finally, number 21 key is to set deadlines. Deadlines are a powerful way to overcome procrastination. Is set a very clear deadline for yourself, promise yourself, and promise other people that you're going to have the job done by that time. Encourage those other people to check on you. Keep them informed. Tell them how it's going. And insist to them it'll be done. And sometimes promising others will help you break the procrastination habit and put you on to the high road to success. One of your main jobs in life is to make a significant contribution to your company and to become extremely successful in your career. And your success is going to be largely based on two laws or principles. The first law is called the law of accumulation. And it says that every extraordinary achievement in human life is the result of thousands of ordinary efforts that nobody ever sees or appreciates. And the second law, which is a sub-law of this, is called the law of incremental improvement. And it says that great successes in America, successful men and women, are those who become better incrementally, a little bit at a time, every hour, every day, every month, every year. Nobody makes big jumps from where they are to where they want to be. What they do is they go to work, and especially they go to work on themselves to get onto the fast track and to stay on the fast track. And in this session, I'm going to give you a series of ideas, the best I've ever learned, on how you can dramatically accelerate the speed at which you grow to the top of your field. Now, let's start off with the first of all. You've heard this many, many times. The first thing you've heard is that knowledge is power. Knowledge equals power. However, it's not that simple. It's not just knowledge. It is practical knowledge that can be applied to getting the critical results in your particular field. It is knowledge that you can use to increase your value and to increase the value of your organization. So the more knowledge you take in that you can use to do something with, the more successful you'll be. In one study a little while ago, they concluded that the top people in every field were different from the others because they simply know more than the average person. They have more knowledge. It's one of the finest and fastest forms of leverage and one of the best ways to accelerate your career that you can imagine. Because we know, number two, is that information and knowledge is doubling every 7 years in America in every single field. That means that in order for you to keep up, your knowledge has to double every 7 years as well. In fact, we know that today, this year, they will publish 2 million articles and 100,000 books. And in order for you to keep current, you have to double your knowledge, or you don't stay in the same place. You actually start to fall behind. Now, the third point is that your success in life will be in direct proportion to the amount of useful information that you have. Sometimes all you need is one key idea at the right time and the right place to totally change a situation, to have an insight or to see a method or a technique that you can use that can dramatically change the whole future of your business and your career. Now, here's an important point with regard to information and knowledge, is that the amount of knowledge you have can be like the amount that is in a bucket or a pot. When you start off your career, the amount of information or knowledge that you have is limited. So the amount of rewards that you have is equally limited. Your rewards and your knowledge, your practical knowledge, will be equal. As you increase your knowledge, you increase your rewards. As your knowledge and information goes up, your rewards go up, and as your knowledge and information go up higher and higher, your rewards get higher and higher. But here's the point. Your job, of course, is to put as much knowledge and information into this pot as possible, but there's a leak. There's a drain in the bottom of the pot. What does it mean? It means that some of your knowledge is draining out all the time. It's becoming obsolete. So if you stop putting new knowledge into the top of the pot, you don't stay in the same place. You actually start to fall back. Now, what's one of the finest ways that you can upgrade your knowledge? Stay on the fast track. Keep up. And it is to read. And it is to read 1 hour per day. Reading 1 hour per day can change your life. Reading 1 hour per day will make you an expert in as little as 3 years. Reading 1 hour per day will make you a national authority in 5 years. If you read 1 hour per day, it'll translate into approximately 1 book per week. Now, this doesn't mean newspapers. This doesn't mean television guides or magazines. It means reading mental protein, reading something that teaches you something educational, something that helps you to advance in your field. The average adult has approximately 72 discretionary hours a week. That means that you sleep 8 hours, you work 8 hours, you've got 72 hours left. What we're saying is take of those 72 hours and spend 7, or tithe if you like, invest 10% of your discretionary hours in your field. It'll translate into a book a week. It'll translate into 50 books a year. It'll translate into more than 500 books in 10 years. Now, the average American, the average adult American, reads less than one nonfiction book a year. If you were to read only one nonfiction book each month, not once a week, but once a month, that would put you into the top 1% in professional development in America. So read 30 to 60 minutes each day, read one book a week, read 50 books a year, and it'll move you to the top of your field. Absolutely guaranteed. Number 5, key to keeping up and staying on the fast track, is use what we call the Stu Leonard method. Now, what Stu Leonard is one of the most famous retailers and grocery store operators in the world, and what he found is he reads voraciously. He reads and he takes notes. But what he does is he takes and he'll read a book and he'll underline all the key points in that book. Then he turn the book over to his secretary, have the secretary type up and take not a synthesis, but a synthesis of the key ideas, type it all up and make it available to him and to other people so that he can go over all the key ideas in a book, and his staff can do the same thing too. So use the Stu Leonard method by reading books, underlining the key points, and then having somebody summarize them all. The 6th key point to keeping up is to read key magazines. There are key magazines in business and there are key magazines in your field, and you need to keep current with them. At the same time, you need to discontinue magazine subscriptions and newsletter subscriptions and even newspaper subscriptions that don't contribute to your major goals. So read Forbes, read Fortune, read Success Magazine, read Inc., read the key trade magazines in your field. Why? It's because the top people in every field read the magazines in their field. The inferior people read the newspapers, they read irrelevant things, or they just watch television. Number 7, use what is called the rip and read method. Most people are getting too much information and they can't handle it all, leading to what is called pileitis. We keep making piles and piles of materials that we intend to read sometime but we never get to, and the material becomes more and more obsolete. So use rip and read. Now, what is this? Well, what you do is, first thing when you get a magazine is, instead of reading the magazine the way it's designed, which is to take you past all the advertising, what you do is you go straight to the table of contents, you look through the articles, you decide only the articles that you want to read, and then you go straight to the article. Go straight to the article and rip it out. Rip it out and put it into a separate file for reading later, and then discard the magazine. Throw it away. In other words, discipline yourself not to become distracted to read everything that's there. Read only what's important, or you'll end up not only not reading what's important, you'll end up not reading anything. So use the rip and read method and put it all into a file, and this is a file that you follow up with on what we call gifts of time. Now, a gift of time is time that you have between meetings. Gifts of time are times that take place during transition. We often call it transition time. When you're traveling, when you're waiting for a plane, when you're waiting an appointment, you carry your file with you and you take out your file and just read through the articles. I will tell you this, it's absolutely astonishing how much material you can keep current with, because in an entire article there only may be 1 or 2 ideas. By the way, always read with a red pen or with a highliner so that you can circle, underline, or highlight the critical ideas so that you can instantly go back to those. Sometimes going back to a critical idea 2 or 3 times is all it takes to cement it into your subconscious and have it available for life. Now, number 9 is learn how to read a little bit at a time in the great books. Again, we use the law of incremental improvement. Everybody wants to be a well-educated, well-rounded person. But what they have found is that if you take the great books, and there's about 100 of them that are put out by, I believe it's the University of Chicago, if you read 15 minutes each day in the great books, you will read all the great books in the course of your lifetime. So at the end of the day, instead of reading something light or pablum, just take a great book and read 15 minutes and think about it, sometimes before you go to sleep. I was speaking to the author the other day, and he said this wonderful thing. He said, if each day you read 1 poem, 1 short story, and 1 essay, in 3 years you will have read 1,000 poems, 1,000 short stories, and 1,000 essays, and you will have spent less than 1 hour a day. Not only that, you'll be one of the best educated people in the entire country. the quality of your thinking, your ability to use your mind to accomplish your results will expand dramatically. Now, if you're going to do a lot of reading, and by the way, some people say, well, I'm not very good at reading, then learn how to read. If you didn't learn how to read in school, then take remedial reading courses, because all readers are leaders. Leaders are readers, and readers are leaders. So learn how to speed read. First of all, learn how to read well. Set it up as a challenge or a goal. Then learn how to speed read. Take a speed reading course. The fact is, they guarantee that you will triple your reading speed in the first lesson in a speed reading course, and they're right. They do it. Use what is called the OPIR method when you read a book. The OPIR method is, first of all, overview. Take a quick look at the book. Outside the book, the writer, the author, the jacket, the quotations, to decide whether you want to read it at all. One of the fastest ways to save time in reading a book is to throw the book away if it's no use to you. Second of all, do a preview. Now, in a preview, what you do is you read the table of contents through, and then you quickly flip through the book to look at the title headings, look at the subtitles, look at the layouts, charts, graphs, and so on, to get a feel for the way the book is read. Third, you do what is called an in-view. Now, an in-view, you always read for purpose. In other words, once you've done your overview and your preview, say, what do I want to get from this book? And then in your in-view, seek the purpose of what you're looking for. And number 3 is your review. Immediately after reading the book, do a quick review of the book. This will take about half to 2/3 of the time it takes to read a normal book, but it will double, triple, quadruple the amount of retention. Your retention level will go up to about 80% in reading a book like this. And you'll be amazed at how many books you can get through. The 11th key to high achievement and to keeping up is audio tape learning. Listen to audio tapes in your car. Audio tape learning was one of the greatest breakthroughs in education since the history of the development of the printing press. The average person drives 12,000 to 25,000 miles each year. That works out to 500 to 1,000 hours that you spend behind the wheel of your car each year. You know what that means? It means 12 and a half to 25 40-hour weeks, or 3 to 6 months of 40-hour weeks, or 1 to 2 university semesters. You can become one of the best educated people in America simply by listening to audio cassettes as you drive around. Audio cassette learning has changed the lives of more people than you can imagine. And remember, you're in a big competition. If you're not listening to audio cassettes, your competitor is listening to audio cassettes and is getting the edge on you. Number 12, read book condensations. There are companies that condense books in written form and in tape form so that you can get the entire essence of a book that would take you 4 or 5 hours to read in 40 or 45 minutes. So subscribe to those. I subscribe to all of them, by the way. The 13th thing that you can do to keep up with your field is go to seminars. What is a seminar? Well, a seminar is not only a learning experience, it is compressed time. For every 1 hour that you spend in a seminar, it takes the seminar presenter 100 hours of study and preparation to learn and refine and distill that material and make it available for you. So you can save yourself many, many hours, which means eventually weeks, even years, by going to seminars conducted by experts. Don't go to seminars conducted by people who teach at universities. Don't read books written by people who are teachers. Read books, go to seminars, learn from people who have practical, successful experience in the field, and sometimes you'll get more information in a day or two at a seminar for a couple of $100s than you could get spending hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars doing it yourself. Be an absolute seminar fanatic. Number 14, use networking. Networking is a powerful way to keep up. We found that 54% of managers who get ahead rapidly in America, 54% spend a lot of time networking. They get together with people in their field. They get together with people outside their field. They're always getting good information, good advice, good insights. They're always current with what's going on. Some of the very best information, most timely, most valuable knowledge that you will get will come from networking on a regular basis inside and outside your field. By the way, in the same study, they found there were a lot of managers who were very competent and effective at getting the job done, but because they didn't network, they were missing an enormous amount of information, and stuff was going right past them. So become an excellent networker. Get together for breakfast, get together for lunch, get together on a regular basis. Number 15, and this can help you as much or more than anything else, is join professional associations. Now, here's an interesting point. Of the thousands of people that are in any particular field, only a few people join their professional associations. Only a few people attend on a regular basis. The rest of them don't, but I'll tell you this, it's almost always the best people who are members and who are active in professional associations. So here's the key. First of all, go and listen to all the speakers. Attend all the meetings. Remember, They are under the gun, and they have an onus to try to bring you the very best and most valuable speakers with the very best and most valuable information. Sit there and take notes copiously. Never sit there passively in a talk. Nobody's brain is good enough to absorb it, so sit there and take notes all the time. But second of all, go to all the workshops that they hold, because sometimes they'll have some of the best educational workshops you can imagine. In my associations, I've found that joining the associations and attending all the meetings can save you 5 solid years of hard work in your career. And third of all is attend all the annual meetings. Remember, the annual meetings are designed to be as valuable as they possibly can for the members of the association. So attend them all. It's amazing how much you can learn. Network, get around with other people. And finally, the last one is umbois. This is considered one of the best ways to get timely and relevant information. What does it mean? It means get out and get among them. Move around with other people. Ask them questions. See what they're doing. Ask what they're doing. 75% of effective executive, effective managers, effective people are always moving around with other people. Keep up with your field. Stay on top. Commit yourself to staying on the fast track. One of the keys to success in relationships is communication. In all successful relationships, the partners will always say that they communicate extremely well. And wherever communications break down or slow down or don't take place, you start to have problems. And one of the keys to effectiveness in the world of work is your ability to communicate effectively and well. In fact, even if you work in technical fields like computer programming or engineering, you spend as much as 75% of your time communicating and interacting with other people. So your effectiveness as a person is determined by your effectiveness in getting your message across and in getting the message clearly that the other person is sending. The starting point is to accept 100% responsibility for everything that you send and for everything that you receive, for both being heard and for hearing. The quality of your life is largely determined by the quality of your communications. And by the way, there's 2 forms of communications. The first form is your interpersonal communications, the way you talk to yourself and dialogue with yourself and think and plan to yourself. And the other form of communications is the way you interact with others. And, of course, one affects the other. So let's start off from the top. Number 1 is 75% of your time is spent communicating. The question is not whether or not you're a good communicator, but whether or not you're going to be a good communicator, because there's nothing more essential. We also know that one of the greatest time wasters in the world of work is poor communications. We communicate poorly in several areas. We delegate poorly. We have aimless meetings that go round and round in circles. We have aimless talks about trying to solve problems and nobody knows what the problem is. We have incorrect delegation. We have poor priority setting. We have misunderstandings that take place and nobody says anything. One person hears one thing, but what the other person said was something totally different. In fact, if your communications were excellent, you would be an outstanding time manager. So number 3, according to the studies of CEOs, 84% of your success in the world of work is going to be determined by how effectively you communicate with other people. Now, there are 3 ways that you communicate in the world of work, the 3 key tools of the executives, and this may change your entire orientation toward communication. Number 1 is one-on-one conversations. How you get along one-on-one is a critical determinant of everything that happens to you. Why? It's because almost all of your success is determined by what others say and do and think about you, and how you interact with them is critical. The second is your ability to communicate in meetings or in presentations in front of several other people. Many careers are made and lost because of an individual's ability or inability to communicate effectively in a meeting. People who sit in meetings and don't say anything are shooting themselves in the foot. And the third type of communications is in written form, is being able to write out in written form clearly what you're trying to say. Your ability to communicate effectively in all 3 of these are absolutely critical to your success in getting your point across to others. Now, the 4th key to communications is like what we call the key to success in picking real estate. We say in real estate it's location, location, location. In communications it is clarity, Clarity, clarity. Remember, we've said clarity with regard to goals, clarity with regard to objectives, clarity with regard to priorities. And in communications, every communication breakdown takes place because of a lack of clarity. And here are the keys to clarity. First of all, time. Take time to fully understand and to be understood. Second of all, attention. Pay very close attention to the content and the syntax of the message. Attention will enable you to see and hear things that other people will miss. And the third is patience. Be sure that you have the patience to listen thoroughly and never assume that you know what the person is going to say. The fifth key is delegation. Or the fifth key problem, let's put it this way, is delegation. Poor delegation is a major single challenge in the world of work. It's so important that we'll talk about it in a few minutes. But when we delegate poorly, we assign the wrong job, or we assign it at the wrong time to the wrong person with the wrong priorities and the wrong outcomes, and the job has to be done over again, is a major single cause of lost time and lost money in businesses. So your ability to delegate is a critical communications tool. Number 6 is lack of focus. A lack of focus, which comes back to our problem with clarity, means fuzziness with regard to communications. Fuzziness with regard to what we want done, when we want it done, how we want it done, what our goals and objectives are, and so on. That's how we keep coming back to the question, what am I trying to do? How am I trying to do it? Am I using this the best way? Is this the best way to do it? So what are the areas of your work life and your home life where fuzziness exists? And wherever there is fuzzy communication, there will be fuzzy results. A 7th reason for poor communications is no priorities. We've talked extensively about the importance of priorities, which means basically to determine what is more important and what is less important, to determine what has to be done first, what has to be done second, to determine the 80-20 rule. What are the 20% of things that we do that account for 80% of results? In fact, the number one key to your success is your ability to communicate priorities and to work on priorities, which means to find out what the priorities are and especially to convey the priorities to others. Whenever I work with my staff, whenever I give them a job to do, I always attach to it a priority rating. This has to be done immediately. This has to be done this week. This has to be done when you catch up or when you get ahead, and so on. Now here's the key to delegation. Coming back to this. Delegation is critically important because delegation enables you to expand your output from what you can do to what you can control. Let me repeat that. Delegation enables you to expand or multiply the value of yourself from what you can do personally to what you can control. Poor delegation, on the other hand, not learning how to do it, is a major reason for time loss. So here's the keys to delegation. First of all, think. The Thomas J. Watson reminder, think. What exactly is the job? Think through the job first. B is to match the person with the job. Ask yourself, think carefully, take the time, who would be the best person to do this job? So match the person with the job properly. Matching the wrong person with the job is a major time waster because of the problems and difficulties. Now C is to discuss the job and to describe the ideal result with the chosen person. In other words, if this job is done right, perfectly, what will it look like? Explain clearly what it is you want. D is to have the person feed it back to you. So the person can feed it back and say, this is what you are asking me to do. Feedback takes a little bit of time, but saves, as they say, a stitch in time saves 9. D is explain to the person what authority and what resources they will have available. What will they have to do the job? D is set a deadline on the job. When does the job exactly have to be done? A job without a deadline is simply a meaningless discussion. And C, D, E, F, G, is the last one, is set a time for review so that you are clear when you're going to review and inspect what you expect. Inspect what you expect. What we have found is if you do not inspect the job and arrange to expect the job on a regular basis, it simply doesn't get done. At least it doesn't get done the way you want it to get done. Now, number 9, regards to communication with your own boss. What do you need to communicate? Well, first of all, you need to know with tremendous clarity exactly what your job is. Do you know what the number one reason for stress in the world of work is? It's not knowing what's expected. It's working hard but not knowing exactly what's expected. So with your boss, be absolutely clear with regard to the tasks and absolutely clear with regard to the priorities. Which comes first? Which comes second? Ask your boss, why am I on the payroll? What have I been hired to accomplish? Now, one of the things which I suggest that people do with your boss is take your boss a list and give your boss a list of your jobs and ask your boss to organize the list in order of priority. Ask your boss to tell you which comes first, which comes second, which comes third, which comes fourth. Tell your boss you can't do everything, but you need to know clearly what is the most important thing. Now, here's the rule. Your boss's top priority must be your top priority. If you want to put the foot on the accelerator of your own career, make your boss's top priority your top priority. You'll never make a mistake. Number 10, decision-making, problem-solving, and decision-making. Here's the key. Enormous amount of time is spent wasting time going around in circles trying to solve problems in any organization. So here are the keys to solving any problem, making any decision. First key is to define the problem clearly. What exactly is the problem? Define it clearly so that everybody involved understands and agrees that, yes, this is the problem. B, ask yourself, what are all the causes of this problem? How and why did this problem occur? You do this so that you can make sure you eliminate the causes so the problem doesn't repeat itself. C, ask yourself, what are all the possible solutions to this problem? D, you ask yourself, what is the best solution? And you ask everybody else until you agree step by step, what are the solutions, what is the best solution? E, make a decision. Once you come to the determination on what the best solution is, make a decision. E is to assign responsibility. Who is going to do it? And finally, the last key over and over again is to set a deadline. A job or a decision without a deadline somehow doesn't seem to get done. Number 11, once you have decided on the solutions, become solution-oriented. A solution-oriented person is a much more effective person in terms of time than a person who's not. So then talk about the solutions. Focus on the future. Focus on the future over the past. Talk about the solutions rather than the problems. Focus on the future over the past. Become intensely solution-oriented. When people come in and say, we have this problem, we have that problem, so on, you say, what is the solution? What do we do from here? What is the thing that we do tomorrow? How do we resolve this situation? Rather than in getting lost in the rest of it. Number 12, in communication, look at what are called authority levels. In confusion over authority levels often leads to poor communications. There are three types of decisions that you make in any organization. Decision number 1 is a command decision. Make sure people know what this is. This is a decision that you make alone. Only you can make it. Number 2 type of decision is a consultative decision. A consultative decision is a decision that you take with input from other people. You ask other people their advice, you take the advice, you think it through, and then you act. The third type of decision is a consensus decision. A consensus decision is a decision that's made on the basis of democracy. In other words, the majority rules. If a person is discussing something with you and they think it's a consensus decision and their opinion is equally valuable, but in your mind it's a consultative or a command decision, you're not only going to have communication problems, you're going to have ego problems. And when you have bruised ego problems, you know you can spend as much as half of your time settling people down whose feelings have been hurt because they misunderstood. Number 13 is delegate everything that you possibly can so that you can have enough time to do any of the things that you need to do. One of the most important of all rules is to delegate, delegate, delegate. Delegate 100% of everything that anybody else can do. Here's the rule. Use what is called the 70% rule. The 70% rule says, rather than taking the job on yourself, ask yourself, who can do this job 70% as well as you? And then give that job to that person, rather than falling back into the temptation to take it yourself. Number 14 is networking. Networking is one of the most powerful of all communication tools. It enables you to get out and get among people, and as we said in the last session, 54% of managers who get promoted rapidly are known as great networkers. Why? Is they're always communicating, interacting. Remember, the quality of your communications, your interactions with other people, the quality and quantity is going to determine your success as much or more than any other single factor in your life. Number 15 with regard to communications is a task focus. Now, a task focus means the very best of all conversations are conversations that are focused on the job, focused on getting the job done. In fact, the healthiest, most positive relationships in the world of work are when people have a task focus. What is the opposite? Is an interpersonal focus, where people are always talking about people and personalities. Whenever you've lost a task focus and people are spending too much time talking about other people and what they think and what they feel and what's going on and the dynamics between people, you have poor organization and overstaffing. People have simply too much time on their hands, or they don't know clearly what it is they're supposed to do in order of priority, when they're supposed to do it, and so on. Which brings us to number 16 with regard to communications. It's the difference between managing versus operating. If you're very successful at operating, which is doing the job, you will move up from operating to managing. You will, as we said earlier, expand from what you can do to what you can control. But the natural tendency whenever you have a difficulty is that you will revert back to operating. So resist this tendency. The number one reason for failure in the executive suite is people fall back to operating instead of managing. Resist upward delegation. Don't let people delegate their tasks back to you. When a person gives you a task, your job is to get them to do the job. Number 18, we're almost to the back here, teach your subordinates how to do parts of your job. One of the fastest ways to use your communication skills to improve your output is to teach other people what to do. And number 19 is to outsource. One of the very best ways that you can use your communication skills to increase your productivity, your output, your effectiveness, and your performance is to outsource everything that you possibly can. Anything that anyone else can possibly do inside and outside your company, you should get them to do in order to be an excellent communicator. Balancing work and family is one of the most important of all considerations in the way you organize your time and your life. And we start off with this critical principle. Number one is that your happiness should be your chief aim in life. You want somebody else's happiness, but your happiness. Your happiness shouldn't be second, it should be first. Because here's the rule. If ever you make somebody else's happiness or something else more important than your happiness, you may get that, but you won't ever be happy. Abraham Lincoln once said, the very best way to help the poor is not to become one of them. The very kindest thing that you can do for other people is to be happy yourself. And this brings us to point number 2. Point number 2 is fully 85% of your happiness comes from your relationships with other people. Fully 85% of your happiness comes from your relationships. Now what this also means is that fully 85% of all your problems also come from your relationships with other people. And one of the primary reasons why we have problems in our relationships, especially the most important ones, is because we don't spend enough time and we don't spend the right quality and quantity of time with them, which we'll deal with in this session. So here's the starting point. Here's a good question. It's, how would you spend your time if you learned today that you only had 6 months to live? How would you spend your time if you learned today that you only had 6 months to live? We asked this question earlier in this course, but the second part of this is, with whom? Who would you spend the time with, predominantly? What would you want to do with that person? Where would you want to go? How would you want to spend it? What would you want to get accomplished if you learned today that you only had 6 months to live? You see, the answer to this question will bring you face to face with what is really important to you. Sometimes in our sessions we say, imagine that it wasn't 6 months, but it was 6 weeks. Or that it wasn't 6 weeks, but suddenly you learned it was 6 days, and then 6 hours, and then 60 minutes. If you learned this very moment that you only had 60 minutes left in life, what would you do and how would you spend your time? Who would you want to talk to? Who did you think about when you thought about that question? Because that tells you a lot about what's really important to you. And this brings us to number 4, which is one of 2 of the most famous of Greek sayings. The first one is moderation in all things. Moderation in all things is what the ancient Greeks said, and as a wise old man said, yes, but except for a few glorious exceptions. Moderation in all things means that you need balance between your work and your family life in order to be happy and in order to be successful. How can you tell when you're out of balance? You always experience being out of balance with stress, with anxiety, with irritation, with sleepless nights, with sometimes psychosomatic illnesses. Whenever you're out of balance in your life, you begin to feel it, and it begins to manifest itself in your relationships with other people. So the starting point of getting your life into balance, number 5, is to begin with your values. We talked about this before, but ask again. What are your values, and what is really important to you? What's really important to you? What do you really care about? Because it's only when you absolutely know what's most important to you that you start to feel happy. And here's the rule. Either you run your life by determining what's important to you, organizing the sequence of events, or your life runs you. And many people today are frantic, and they're unhappy, and they're anxious, and they're tense for a very specific reason. And it's because their life is running them, because they have not put their hands onto the steering wheel of their own life, and they're not steering it. An important part of balance is for you to describe what is called the ideal end result, your ideal vision, or what we say, your ideal lifestyle. What is your ideal lifestyle? If you could live any kind of life that you wanted, what would it be? What would it include? What ingredients would make you the most happy? What ingredients would make you the most happy? Answering this question enables you to do what we call gap analysis. Gap analysis is where you look at your life today, and you look at your life as it would be if it were perfect. And you look at the differences between where you are and where you want to be, and you ask yourself, what changes would you have to make to begin to create your ideal life, especially with regard to the most important people in your life? And here's one of the most important points of balance. It's to set peace of mind as your highest goal. Peace of mind is in reality the highest human good. It's the aim of everything we do in life. It's the foundation of all psychology and philosophy and religion and everything else. But you need to set it as your highest goal and then refuse to compromise your peace of mind. And here's the most remarkable discovery. When you set peace of mind, your own personal inner happiness and contentment as your highest goal, you'll probably never make another mistake. You'll receive unerring guidance, always to do the right thing at the right time. And then if you refuse to ever compromise your peace of mind, you'll become a person of character and strength and inner integrity and personal confidence. So here's a question for you. A, what gives you your greatest peace of mind? Analyze it. Ask, identify. What gives you the most peace of mind? What makes you feel the very best? What situation? What people? What is going on in the present, or what has happened in the past that makes you feel the best? And B, what detracts from your peace of mind? What kind of thoughts? What kind of people? What kind of situations make you the most anxious or the most uneasy or the most tense? And what can you do to start having more of A and less of B? Now, number 8 is, remember this, that dissatisfaction and unhappiness always arise when your goals and activities on the one hand and your values on the other hand are not congruent. Goal congruency with your activities or with your values is absolutely essential. It means that you must be living your life and doing what is most important to you. And whenever you're not, you feel a lot of stress. So ask yourself this question. In what part of your life do you experience the most stress? In what part of your life do you feel tense or anxious or like you're running, or do you feel under pressure? Almost invariably it's because you're doing something that's inconsistent with your very highest and best good. Point number 9 in balance is this.